Good afternoon and welcome to the FEMA Region 2 Individual and Community Preparedness webinar series. My name is Allison Albright and I am the Regional Preparedness Liaison for FEMA Region 2. I'm going to provide a few technical considerations before we begin. Today's proceedings are being recorded and captioned. The archived event will be available on the Region 2 website in the coming days. You should hear audio through your computer speakers, so please ensure your volume is turned up so you may hear the proceedings accordingly. In the top right corner, we ask if you'd like to receive news and updates from Region 2, and if so, please enter your email address and we'll be sure to add you to our distribution list. We will have a question and answer session after the presentation concludes. You'll see a Q&A pod in the lower right-hand corner. Please feel free to submit your questions about the subject matter there, and time permitting, we'll do our best to answer them. Finally, the PowerPoint presentation from today will be available for you to download in the file share pod at the end of the presentation as a PDF. You can click on the file and download it using the download button. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the Region 2 Community Preparedness Officer to introduce our speaker and today's proceedings.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Debbie Casa, the Community Preparedness Officer for FEMA Region 2. On behalf of our team working to strengthen preparedness across New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, I'm so happy to welcome you to our Preparedness and Resilience webinar series. FEMA's 4-year strategic plan, Goal 1, is to build a culture of preparedness. The Region 2 Individual and Community Preparedness Division is focused on helping people prepare for disasters, which includes increasing the percentage of people with savings set aside for an emergency, delivering training to help nonprofits and community-based organizations continue service delivery following a disaster, helping people prepare for disasters in a COVID-19 environment, and increasing the percentage of people who have taken preparedness action. As part of that goal, we're pleased to be hosting this webinar about language diversity in our country and the importance of providing clear public messaging in languages other than English as appropriate throughout FEMA's disaster preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation activities. We have 3 subject matter experts speaking today on the topic. The first is Anthony Hines. He is a Civil Rights Advisor lead in the Office of Equal Rights, Civil Rights Cadre for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. As a Civil Rights Advisor in the Civil Rights Cadre, when deployed, he is part of the team responsible for compliance with and enforcement of civil rights obligations in connection with programs and services provided by FEMA and by recipients of FEMA financial assistance on disasters. Anthony currently serves as the lead advisor for civil rights on DR 4473 Puerto Rico. He also serves as the Civil Rights Advisor attached to Region 2 in support of disaster operations within the region. Anthony started with FEMA in 2017. As a Civil Rights Advisor, Anthony has deployed and supported disasters in Texas, North Carolina, Alaska, Oregon, Washington, Florida, and Puerto Rico. Our second speaker today is Myra Lopez de Victoria. She is a Strategic Communication Officer for FEMA, responsible for the Language Services Branch at the Office of External Affairs in Washington, D.C. Previously, her primary responsibilities were as Strategic Communications Liaison for FEMA Response, Recovery, and Preparedness. As a language specialist and multilingual coordinator, her role is to design, develop, and implement programs to comply with the agency's communication goals to limited English proficiency level and people with disabilities, stakeholders, audiences, and communities. Among her many successes is the development and implementation of standard operation procedures for FEMA to conduct national, regional, and local outreach targeting the 4 agencies' core missions of preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. Last but not least, we have Francesca Ramo. She is a public affairs specialist in the Disaster Operations Division within FEMA's Office of External Affairs. She has served as an external affairs specialist at FEMA for 12 years and has responded to a wide array of communication challenges facing limited English proficiency groups across the nation. In her current role at FEMA, she manages multilingual multilingual content for FEMA.gov website and assists all components of the Office of External Affairs in support of FEMA's work to serve disaster survivors. And with that, I believe I'm going to turn the mic over to Anthony Hines to kick us off. Anthony?
Thank you, Deborah, and good morning, everyone. Again, as Deborah mentioned, my name is Anthony Hines. I'm a Civil Rights Advisor with the Office of Equal Rights Civil Rights Cadre. I'm going to be speaking with you here in regards to limited English proficiency and going over some information in regards to jurisdictions that the agency has, as well as what that looks like actually in implementation on disasters. So the first slide I'd like to get us to is an understanding of who is a person with limited English proficiency. A person who does not speak English as their primary language and who has a limited ability to read, write, speak, or understand English well is someone who is a person with limited English proficiency. And understanding that and using people first language, this definition can be found in FEMA's Language Access Plan, which I'll be speaking on later in the presentation. The next few slides I'm going to review with you are some of the jurisdictions that the agency has in regards to actually implementing limited English proficiency plans and what compliance is necessary in order to follow, in order to ensure that the agency is compliant. The first we have here is Section 308 of the Stafford Act, which includes persons who are LEP among the protected classes for non-discrimination actions taken by federal agencies. Second, what we have is Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Title VI requires that non-discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin by recipients of federal assistance. This includes non-discrimination on the basis of LEP and applies to state, local, tribal, and territorial, otherwise known as SLTT, governments and recipients. Next, we have Executive Order 13166. This order signed into effect on August 11, 2000, speaks really to four main categories, but it's meant to improve access to survivors for persons with limited English proficiency. But it requires federal agencies to do the following. First is examine language services provided and develop and implement a system to provide those services to LEP groups. What that means is that if a service is provided in English, it also should be provided to LEP persons, so as not to discriminate on the basis of national origin under Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Next, the executive order also ensures that recipients of federal financial assistance provide meaningful access to LEP members of the public, including applicants and beneficiaries who are LEP. The executive order also includes substantive and procedural requirements. The difference between these is that the substantive deals in part with the meaningful provision of access just as to someone, just to an LEP person or group as it would to someone who is proficient in English. Procedurally, it requires the development and implementation of a language access plan. The current FEMA language access plan is being used by officers within the agency, and I'll review that here in the next couple of slides. Next, I'm going to speak on the Post-Katrina Emergency Management Act, otherwise known as PCIMRA, which was enacted in 2006. This act clarifies and modifies the Homeland Security Act with respect to the organizational structure, authorities, and responsibilities of FEMA and the FEMA administrator. As it relates to LEP, the requirement of the administrators to do the following, which is to identify LEP population groups and incorporate an emergency planning, ensure that information is accessible to disaster survivors in various formats, develop and maintain an information clearinghouse of model language assistance programs and best practices for state and local governments, as well as to be, and this clearinghouse is readily provided through FEMA.gov and Ready.gov websites, which are the clearinghouse for multilingual public information. So the tools utilized to ensure that these requirements are being complied with by the agency are as follows. You have the limited English proficiency data and maps, which as CRADs we use in the field to partially determine and help us provide to field leadership in the communities a community analysis that shows where certain groups that are classified under the protected basis of Title VI, where they are in the disaster area. This particular map helps show limited English proficiency data in communities, so to be able to provide information that they can access. Other tools we have are also the U.S. Census data or the American Community Survey. Registration intakes from the FEMA National Processing Service Centers, which can be readily looked at when individuals register for FEMA assistance, as well as the FEMA disaster historical data, federal multilingual websites such as the CDC, IRS, and USA.gov, data from state, territorial, tribal, and local partners, again the SLTT groups, as well as feedback from FEMA staff deployed in the field. I'd like to spend a second speaking on that because that is probably, as a CRAD, the most important tool is that reaching out to the community stakeholders, voluntary agencies and groups, as well as other groups with other cadres within the agency to ensure that if there is or has been an identified group under LEP, that they get the access that they need to ensure that the agency is in compliance. Part of all these tools, again, are part of the engagement and outreach. CRADs in the field, along with the Office of External Affairs Specialists, collaborate to identify languages and dialects spoken by LEP groups so that we can provide access to the information through translated printed materials. We also connect with local partners who serve LEP groups, again, those community and faith-based organizations, to ensure that the message and access and information that needs to be accessed by survivors is done. We work with media and TV, print, radio, and online platforms to share emergency information, again, in collaboration with external affairs. And we ensure LEP groups have access to qualified interpreters if needed. We also identify personnel and/or emergency managers who are bilingual and speak other languages and can assist LEP survivors during a disaster. So part of what the Office of Equal Rights does, and part of what I do as a civil rights advisor within the office, is to ensure that the jurisdiction that's had over civil rights complaints from persons who are LEP, among other identified bases, get investigated. So complaints may relate to FEMA programs and activities or inactivities carried out by SLTT partners. And so if there is federal funding being used or if there is some type of federal assistance being provided, we ensure that compliance is being met from a civil rights standpoint for those individuals accessing the resources. OER at the headquarters level also investigates complaints and seeks voluntary compliance. Our goal is to work with the individual or group who has identified the deficient civil rights behavior or civil rights issue to ensure that continues to ensure that civil rights is met and being complied with. Civil rights advisors deployed to disasters also provide technical assistance and guidance not only to FEMA leadership, but also to SLTT partners to ensure that the language access plan is being promoted and again that the agency is within compliance. Speaking now on the FEMA language access plan, the plan itself describes FEMA's current language access activities as required under the Executive Order 13166, which again is this procedural part of the requirements of the executive order. The plan includes steps to improve and increase language services for persons who are LEP in operations, services, activities, and programs across FEMA. The FEMA Language Access Plan implements the DHS language, the Department of Homeland Security Language Access Policy, to set standards, operating principles, and guidelines that govern the delivery of language services to ensure meaningful access to programs, services, and activities by persons who are LEP. This applies to all FEMA program offices and recipients that interact with persons who are LEP. At the bottom, you'll be able to see the language access plan, which will be later shared. But that language access plan again goes over it covers all of FEMA's initiative to ensure that language access is being provided to those persons who are LEP. With that, I will turn it over to Myra. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Anthony. Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Mayra Lopez de Victoria, and I will be speaking to you about limited English proficiency level function in many of our disasters. For example, one of the most important, well-known disasters that we have in our historic, most recent times has been Katrina, Sandy, the 2017 hurricane season, the 2018 hurricane season and wildfires, most recently the earthquakes in Alaska and Puerto Rico, plus COVID-19. The number one issue and most important challenge that we faced during Katrina was the huge impact the fisherman community had after Katrina in the 4 states that were impacted. And specifically the language that they were lacking of, it was more Vietnamese than anything else. So it was not only for FEMA an opportunity to understand that Spanish is not the only language that we work for. It was a great opportunity to understand more about the Vietnamese community and the things that they need and how they need to understand the information. I would like to share that personally, the Limited English Proficiency Level program not only tries to put the information in the native language our disasters are in need in order to have access to the benefits available. It's also understanding their cultural stance, and it's also understanding which are the figures in the community who mean something for them and from who they will take information as good in order to act. It has been said by many experts in the field of psychology that one person that is traumatized by a disaster may have an impact in their understanding and speaking and even ways to behave in 2 levels. For example, you may end up having, let's say you have a capability of having a master's degree. Out of the sudden, the trauma of a disaster can put your understanding and comprehension up to a bachelor's degree, and consequently the impact goes down. So the limited English proficiency level not only looks after providing the information in other languages, it also looks for plain language in the target language that we are looking for. For example, we have known that for some languages such as Hmong, we need to use the Green Hmong because that is the community that is present here in the United States if the disaster is here. But we also have to impart a 6th grade level understanding, meaning that all the information that comes from FEMA that in occasions can be highly bureaucratic, right? There's so many steps, there's so many questions. We need to lower that understanding to 6th grade level Hmong language. In many of the work that we did for Sandy, one of our top communities that we had to serve was the Russian community. In the areas of New York and New Jersey, the Russian community not also was having a limitation with the English, but it was particularly related to the elderly. The elderly in the states of New York and New Jersey were the ones showing the highest level of limitation, and we had to start working with the community leaders, the people that they actually kind of share and interact every day in order to bring the message. It was almost impossible to get them to act and get the things they needed if it was not communicated in Russian and by a member of their community. In 2017, we had the hurricane season. Not only was the impact of Harvey and Irma in areas as Texas, where we know Spanish and Vietnamese and Korean are our top limited English proficiency level languages. We also had Maria that impacted the island of Puerto Rico, and we also had our Virgin Islands bringing a lot of Haitian Creole. In the case of Maria, for example, the agency not only exercised many of the activities in Spanish, we also bring back to the community an opportunity to employ Puerto Ricans to support Puerto Ricans. And it was the moment when we opened up a contract that was over $3 million, and it allowed us for our contractors to hire Puerto Ricans who were fully bilingual, and they were stationed at every single meeting. They were stationed at all of our DRCs in an opportunity not only for FEMA to comply, right, and take their mission on, but an opportunity of provide employment to Puerto Ricans who at the moment were fully bilingual with the whole capability and were able to support their Puerto Ricans as well, bringing some kind of comfort and help to them. When we were working with the earthquakes in Alaska and Puerto Rico, for Puerto Rico we exercised the same activity, but in the case of Alaska we faced a different challenge, and the different challenge was tribal native communities. For example, we had to take all the documentation and all the preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation information and turn it over to a couple of native Indian languages, and that was kind of pretty difficult because not of those dialects and languages are readily available within the same community. I am going to leave COVID-19 activities for Francesca Ramos because she is our current lead taking care of that operation right now. And LEP and FEMA mission areas get together in 4 very important areas: preparedness and protection, where we work with the documents and the information that people need to have at hand to be prepared before an event happens and be able to thrive in ways that they can protect themselves in front of the event. We also help with the mitigation area because most of the times when disaster survivors are requested to rebuild, being able to rebuild stronger and safer is very, very important. So we have a lot of documentation on our website on how to rebuild safer. In response, we are very, very concentrated on saving lives, protect the property and the environment, and this is the area where we conduct a lot of social media activity where we are able to provide information right there and then. And then when it comes to recovery, one of the top important activities that we put a lot of effort in is on intake registrations, that area, and to ensure that people are aware of all of our deadlines, all the programs available, all the help that is not only provided by FEMA, but by many other organizations who join us in our joint field offices. That is the way in which we kind of implement the LEP function in a tangible way. For example, in the area of preparedness, we have our websites, ready.gov and listo.gov, and we have posted many information such as family communication plans. Those are PDFs that people can download and be able to fill out to be prepared. When you have this presentation downloaded, if you click on any of these languages listed, you will see those documents and samples of them available for and readily to use. I already spoke about that important information that we conducted and that operation regarding the Russian community, and a sample of that is for you available on slide 18. When we are working also in the area of recovery, the Vietnamese is for us a very, very important community, and we support them because they kind of be impacted in many areas across the country, in many states. Like, for example, we have strong Vietnamese communities in the West Coast and also in the South Coast, which is heavily prone for hurricanes. When we are working in mitigation, you can see at the slide how we work. We have worked in the past, mitigation information in Hindi, and that is an example on how we do help Hindi communities in terms of their insurance and how they can actually reach out to insurance agents who speak their language for their support. Now I am going to turn it over to Ms. Francesca Ramos for all the FEMA online activities that we consistently and every day conduct in support of our LEP disaster survivors. Thank you so much for your attention today.
Thank you, Myra, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending where you're joining us from today. So I'm going to speak a little bit about FEMA's presence online, particularly FEMA's multilingual online presence and across digital social media platforms. Obviously, FEMA has a very strong presence online in Spanish, even though we do provide for other languages. And a lot of our information, there's a lot of valuable information available across FEMA's Spanish language websites, including the ones that you see listed on the slide, FEMA.gov in Espanol, lisa.gov, which is an equivalent to the ready.gov site, disasterassistance.gov, which is the portal where disaster survivors are able to register for disaster assistance following a disaster, and floodsmart.gov. Now, the FEMA.gov site is pretty much a mirror to the English page and has a lot of the same information that the English version does, with a lot of program and disaster information. The website is currently undergoing a complete and major redesign to modernize and improve the user experience, make it more user-friendly. This is something that's mandated for all federal agency websites by the 21st Century IDEA Act. However, as we moved into redesigning the website, some of the same considerations that we already take into account is we will continue mirroring the English page and keep the content that will go live in Spanish as much as possible as a one-to-one. A couple other things regarding FEMA.gov, and Myra touched on it as she gave you examples of disasters. You know, once we have a disaster declaration, the FEMA web team creates disaster pages automatically in English and Spanish for those disasters, and through the Joint Information Center, the JIC, once we have a field office, contents and products specific to the language needs of that particular disaster area are also added onto the website. So again, based on the language assessment using the tools that Anthony mentioned earlier in the presentation, disasters will translate their products and materials and messages, most commonly into Spanish and oftentimes into several languages. So while some disasters may only need multilingual content for perhaps Spanish and maybe one or two other additional languages, other disasters, for example, Hurricane Michael in Florida in 2018 is a disaster that required content in approximately 9 to 11 languages. For COVID-19, we have also been providing translations in support of content, in fact, for other federal agencies and some of our state partners. But we have on FEMA.gov the COVID-19 response page, which is also fully available in Spanish and Haitian Creole. We also have important information such as our rumor control page regarding COVID-19 rumors. That page, as well as civil rights information, is available in 12 languages. Additionally, during our steady state disaster or our steady state work, non-disaster related, we continuously work with program liaisons across FEMA to capture any updates to program pages, any changes in policies that may change the language and content that needs to be on our site, and we make sure that that gets updated for Spanish. And of course, I believe we also mentioned earlier that we work really closely also with our FEMA News Desk, and all news releases and products that are distributed through the News Desk are also distributed and posted on FEMA.gov in Espanol. Listo.gov is the Spanish equivalent to the Ready.gov site. This site also has a lot of preparedness information for individuals and families, and there are a lot of tips for preparing for all types of emergencies and hazards. And much of that information, including things that people can do before, during, after any particular hazard, is available in 12 languages. Maybe a few more. I need to double check on that, but I believe it is at a minimum of 12 languages. Disasterassistance.gov, again, the portal where disaster survivors can apply and register for FEMA disaster assistance, and they can go through the application process and follow up on their case in the Spanish language. And FloodSmart page, the FloodSmart page is also fully available in Spanish with many resources and information regarding the National Flood Insurance Program. And on that site, people are able to access flood risk and hazard information for the particular area that they live in, get mitigation tips, information on benefits of the importance of having a flood policy, and they can also use the online tool to locate agents in their area that can help them purchase flood insurance. Okay, FEMA also have official Spanish language accounts on social platforms. So FEMA Espanol is the Twitter handle for the Spanish account. And it is a very active account. If you're interested in checking that out or not following, I would recommend giving that account a follow. FEMA tweets daily from that account, and sometimes more than once a day. All the tweets that we push out through our English account are also translated on a daily basis, and we mirror as much of the content that goes out from the English side. And in the media attached to those tweets, we try to use translated infographics and images and sometimes videos to accompany the messaging. And the same goes for the Facebook account. FEMA's Spanish Facebook page is also pretty much a mirror to the English Facebook page, and that's updated pretty much on a daily basis with different posting and messages. And then FEMA's YouTube channel, there's a lot of videos on there. We've done a lot of work, video work during the COVID-19 response, and many of those videos have been translated and are available in Spanish. And of course, also the FEMA mobile app, you're able to download that directly into your phone. That's fully functional and available in Spanish, and there's a couple of functionalities that the app has. That, all the features that the English one has, that app is constantly updated to mirror what the functionality of the English one is. Okay, and then I just wanted to also share some helpful resources and contacts that are available online. Like the LEP page. As Anthony mentioned, there are some tools on there that can help you access and sort through assessing the language needs, and you can pretty much drill down to the county level for demographic data for anywhere in the country, and that's done through the American Community Survey, which draws from Census Bureau data to provide that information. The LEP.gov site actually just recently underwent its own web redesign to modernize. So I have to acknowledge that I'm not as familiar with it as I used to be, but I do encourage everyone to visit that site and check out what's available, because there are some really great tools that you can use at the county local level. And of course, the Department of Justice, if you want to look at the executive order 13166, improving access to services for persons with LEP, that's available on their website. And when you're on the DOJ site, you can also you can jump right back to the lep.gov site with a link at the bottom of the page. The FEMA.gov site, if you want to reach out and have any questions, comments on the site, you can access through this page. And I believe since the presentation will go out, you'll have all these links available to you. But you can use the contact form to, provide us any feedback. The same goes for the listo.gov. That has a contact us page. And then the last email address that I kind of wanted to flag for you is the FEMA multilingual inbox. For the most part, with any question or request that anyone has regarding languages, we try to help everybody out. Someone's always responsive to that inbox, so feel free to reach out, and if we don't have the answer, we'll certainly do our best to at least point you in the right direction. And I think that's kind of what I have right now, and I'll turn it back over to Allison. Thank you.
Thanks so much to all our speakers. We do have several questions, and I think we have plenty of time. We should be able to get through all of them. Our first question, I believe, is for Anthony. What entities are covered under Section 308, and for what period of time?
Yes, thank you for the question. So it's all federal assistance during a major disaster or emergency. And so if it's a presidential federal declared disaster, they will most likely be covered.
Thank you. Will FEMA revisit the 19 top languages most encountered according to the Language Access Plan to ensure it is accurate? For example, Hmong is not included in that list?
Yes, this is Mayra, and I would like to answer that question. For every presidentially declared disaster that FEMA gets to open our joint field offices or work through any remote circumstance, we conduct what is called a limited English proficiency level assessment that not only includes which are the actual communities that we have represented on their left, it also gathers information about media that is available to reach out to the individuals. It also looks for community groups and organizations that can help us share and distribute the FEMA information in those other languages, regardless of which are the ones that we have in our initial commitment. So, for example, there are some disasters in which we work with native Indian languages, such as Cherokee, and it's because you have a Cherokee community that is not necessarily under a reservation, but it's a language that shows up as having a limited English proficiency level at the U.S. Census Bureau. We don't have a full budget to actually go into the top 12 Indian languages, but as soon as we find them, disaster through disaster, we ensure that we give the information regarding the recovery, and we also provide an extension to all the participants in a joint field office, meaning that if we have a nonprofit organization that needs and requests to the FEMA Language Services Unit inside a disaster for some information in the languages represented for that disaster, we do it. For example, we have a very strong relationship with the Small Business Administration, and if they have to publish information in a language that they haven't ever worked before, we support them for the exactly information that is required for that disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Myra. And you may have answered part of this, but one of the questions was, how does FEMA provide oversight to ensure it is in compliance with its language access plan, such as providing the materials in the 19 languages?
For example, it's the General Accountability Office, the oversight entity, and they ensure not only that we are actually working in our commitment regarding that language access plan, but it's also the Department of Justice, the one who has implemented the executive mandate 13166, and they oversee the activities of all DHS components, DHS, and many other agencies who are giving benefits to normal individuals, people in the community, and how they can comply with these requirements.
Okay. Anthony, why are NOFOs and grant applications only provided in English?
So I'm going to have to ask that particular person who asked. If you'll reach out to me directly, and my information should be provided with the slides to better answer that question.
Okay. I know, Myra, you answered some questions. I don't know if you addressed this one about SLTTs. Can they use FEMA funding to conduct outreach and communication with LEP individuals and communities?
Yes. In occasions, we have a lot of information that we have worked for a specific state or for a specific local jurisdiction. So we actually encourage for those standing in the side of states that if you have any needs, please contact us at FEMA-multilingual@FEMA.dhs.gov so we can actually make some crossover and find out if that information is already available. And if not, we can try to put together some joint activities that can support states, local territories, and our tribes in producing the information they need. Thank you.
Thanks, Myra. How do these regulations and orders that we've discussed impact institutes of higher education? Would any one of our speakers like to take that question?
Can you repeat it real fast for me again, Deborah? I'm sorry.
How does everything that we've discussed today impact institutes of higher education?
So if they are receiving federal funds or asking for assistance, it would all apply to them as well, just as any applicant.
Gotcha.
I would like to share that in many occasions, higher education institutions and organizations become great help to this program. For example, when we were working in Alaska, there was a group within a language program at the Alaska University who came up and supported us with giving not only feedback of the documents and information translated, but they also provided some hours from students who were wanting to practice the language that they know in the Indian tribe side of the house, and we went into an agreement that was beneficial for everybody. So higher education organizations and institutions have with us not only a funding relationship, we also have hands, in supporting disaster survivors when disasters happen, and this relationship works extremely well. It has been FEMA experience within the last 10 years.
Okay. Is there any considerations put into place regarding internet connectivity and LEPs? One of our listeners have found that students may have devices to use, but the barrier seems to be the internet connectivity. I'm not sure if that's a question that you guys could answer.
This is Anthony. I'm not exactly sure what to respond to that person, but please feel free to again reach out, and if there's a specific issue that you think OER might be able to troubleshoot, we'd be glad to look into it.
Okay. CBOs serving multilingual communities cannot read headers in other languages. English should always be paired with whatever the text is that is written. This is especially important when a different alphabet is used. English speakers can't tell the difference between Urdu and Arabic. when those words are written in those languages, but a counselor may want to access that material to give it to a speaker to use on one of those languages. So I think that was more of a statement than a question. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that.
Yes, that's a good recommendation, and I would like to more share with Francesca potential answer, but we are now working on a web redesign that will enhance the language identification and the language use in terms of characters on display of the information that we have in our website. And Francesca, I don't know if there's anything else we would like to comment, but I do know the website redesign is going to be fabulous in providing links to links and a better portrait of or display of the information that we have available.
Okay, thanks, Myra. Will FEMA provide translation for languages that are not on the top list?
Yes, we will, based on a disaster-by-disaster activity. When we have languages in a presidential declared disaster that are not on the top list, we will work with them regardless they are on the list or not. And for example, the example that I provided earlier about native Indian languages or languages that are more like dialects instead of official languages, we work with the community to ensure that either we have some interpretation or some translation capability to support those disaster survivors. Thank you.
Excellent.
Excuse me, Deborah, if I could echo that as well. That's part of one of the functions of our office too, that's part of the collaboration I spoke on. If a CRAD or if anyone in the field recognizes that there is a language that needs to be translated or information that needs to be translated in a certain language, we would reach out to the Office of External Affairs and ensure that the information, just as it was given to a person who is English proficient, that it also be given to that person or group in that language as well.
Okay, good. Will ready.gov, listo.gov, and other language links be updated? For example, listo.gov information and topic links often are not as current as ready.gov or Ready Kids information. Francesca?
Sure. Yeah, hi, this is Francesca. I'll take that for sure. Yeah, so with ready.gov, we work really closely with the Ad Council, and as content is updated, then we work closely with them to make updates. As I mentioned, with the overall FEMA.gov redesign that is happening, we'll be taking all other languages into consideration and start, providing the content in a sort of on a rolling basis, as content will be changed and updated and sort of reworked a bit to apply to a more user-friendly capability on the website. Then we'll be working into the other languages so that the information that is really important to survivors, disaster survivors, is available in the other languages. Thank you.
Great. When considering limited English proficiency, is FEMA also considering those in the deaf and hard of hearing community for whom English may be effectively a second language for them?
Yes, this is Anthony. That is also being considered as well. And our group, Office of Equal Rights, is also working to ensure that any type of sign language interpreters or services, CART, Braille, that need to be provided are also provided. And I'll let Myra speak a little bit on the Office of External Affairs function in terms of interpreters, but in terms of making sure that the deaf community also has access to the same information, that's also a big function in what the Office of Equal Rights does on disasters.
Yes, our best example is Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. There's something that is called American Sign Language, but also other languages have adopted some of the signs and have created very specific sign language, and the communities themselves kind of create their own signs, as the discipline matures. So in Puerto Rico, we have had the opportunity to provide services through what is called a trilingual contract that provides interpreters that support the run of the information from American Sign Language to Spanish to what is incorrectly said, and please bear with me, something that we'll call like Spanish Sign Language or Puerto Rican Sign Language, but it's the best that we can do, for example, to support those of, deaf hearing in order to do it in their language as much as we can. We also support a lot of captioning and a lot of text messaging to support others who may have the need. So yes, we have grown and we have expanded our services to disaster survivors to what is called a trilingual interpretation and translation contract. Thank you.
And if I could speak on that just briefly as well, on 4473, which are the earthquakes down here in Puerto Rico, it was recognized that the trilingual interpreters were needed early on, and so Office of Equal Rights has been in constant collaboration with External Affairs in Puerto Rico to ensure that if we cannot get if ASL by itself is not sufficient, we get the correct contractors in place so we can get a trilingual interpreter for whatever the event may be occurring or whatever the needs are to meet the survivors.
Right. I never even heard of trilingual translators. We just had one last comment. It was clarification on an earlier question about the internet connectivity. The clarification they provided was, since the internet is used to give information out to the masses, what emergency plans are in place to reach those with spotty or no internet connectivity, since their mobile devices would probably be a fast source to get information in their own language?
So far, we have made great strides with Spanish in regarding the FEMA mobile app, and for example, also the disasterassistance.gov website to request FEMA assistance is available in Spanish, but we do recognize that we need to do stronger and better when we are working in areas where internet is not available. And one of the important work that FEMA does is that we do have our field teams, and when they are tasked with visiting communities person to person, and in the past they were called community relations, but now they have a different name. They actually, kind of support disaster survivors, visiting them door to door and providing FEMA information. And in that case, if it's in writing, because there's no internet service, then we look a lot to flyers and that kind of, information brochures that are translated in more languages than Spanish. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our last question for today. Does FEMA collect data after each disaster on the statistics regarding number of language services are requested in and the percentage of meeting language needs and inability to meet those needs?
Yes, we do. We not only have files for each residentially declared disaster, we also have at the end of each disaster our limited English proficiency level officers submit a full report on what transpired in that disaster in that specific area, so we can be more prepared for the next time. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our speakers today, Anthony, Myra, Francesca. That was a very informative presentation. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us and to answer everyone's questions. You'll see Allison put the pod on your screen where you can download all of the slides for today, so that would incur the links and the contact information for all of our speakers, as well as the links for our upcoming webinars. Starting next week, the Federal Trade Commission is coming back to talk about scams targeting small businesses. It will also include information specific to COVID-19 that will be offered in both English and Spanish on the 22nd and 23rd. The last webinars in our HHS series will be on July 20th and 24th in Spanish regarding the role of social services and mental health during a federally declared emergency and response with a focus on families and children. At the end of the month, we have hurricane readiness for emergency managers, so that isn't necessarily just for everybody. It's not really going to be about hurricane preparedness, but our hurricane program manager for FEMA Region 2 is going to be with us to talk about the upcoming season and what emergency managers can expect. Let's see what else we have. And then we're working on a series for National Preparedness Month, which is in September. So in August, we will be kicking it off. Again, FEMA External Affairs will be with us, along with New Jersey Office of Emergency Management and New York City Emergency Management, talk about the tools that FEMA has for National Preparedness Month. And the state and the city will each talk about how they take those tools and use them to customize their programs. We're going to follow up with, how to make messages stick and kind of inspire action, right? Because what we're really trying to do when we promote National Preparedness Month is change behavior. And we will have a webinar on information resources for the power-dependent access and functional needs community. And we are looking to add an additional webinar that week, which is going to be on how to make your communications accessible for everyone. And today's webinar, like all of our webinars, are recorded, and they can be found on the FEMA Region 2 site, right under National Preparedness. If you just scroll down the page, you'll see individual and community preparedness webinars. Just click there, and all 50 plus webinars that we've done this year, plus some from the previous years, will be found there. I understand that they're updating the site a little bit, so you may not be able to access today's webinar for a week or two, but if you're not able to download it today and you have somebody that you want to share it with, I put the FEMA R2 Prepares email address up there. Feel free to email us. If you need it sooner, we'll make sure you get it. Thank you to our speakers, and thank you to everybody for attending today. We're signing off with 3 minutes to spare. Everybody is free to drop. Have a beautiful